The unexpected invitation the cream-colored envelope sat on Priya's kitchen counter for 3 days before she found the courage to open it. Her name was written in gold calligraphy, an elegant touch that made her stomach tighten. The handwriting. Farhan always did have impeccable penmanship. When she finally slid her finger under the seal, the invitation confirmed what she already suspected. Farhan Kumar and Zara Mirza cordially invited her to celebrate their union. The wedding was scheduled for next month at the Grand Pavilion Hotel, the same venue. Priya and Farhan had once chosen for their own wedding, before he called it off without warning. "You can't possibly be considering going," said Nisha, her roommate, peering over Priya's shoulder at the invitation. "That's just cruel of him to even invite you." Priya traced the embossed lettering with her fingertip. "Maybe Zara added me to the guest list. They say she's very inclusive." "Inclusive? Inviting your fiancé's ex-fiancé isn't inclusive. It's insane." Nisha grabbed the invitation and examined it, or calculated. Maybe they want to show how over it they are. Priya took back the invitation and placed it carefully on the counter. 6 months ago, she had been trying on wedding dresses. 6 months ago, Farhan had looked into her eyes and promised forever. And then, without warning, he had ended everything. 2 weeks later, gossip spread that he was seeing Zara, the stunning interior designer whose family owned half the real estate in their community. Her phone buzzed with a message from ADD, another friend from their social circle. "Did you get the invitation? Everyone's talking about it. You're not going, right? Everyone's talking about it." Of course they were. In their tight-knit South Asian community, Priya had become the one who got left. Quiet, bookish Priya, who worked at the university library. Who could blame Farhan for upgrading to vivacious, wealthy Zara? That was the narrative that had taken hold anyway. Against her better judgment, Priya scrolled through Instagram. Zara's profile was filled with pre-wedding festivities, mehndi preparation, outfit selections, venue tours. In each photo, she was radiant, confident. Everything Priya had been told she wasn't. "I'm going," Priya said suddenly, surprising even. Herself, Nisha nearly dropped her coffee mug. "You're what?"
Oh.
"Why would you put yourself through that?" "'Cause everyone expects me to hide away, ashamed and heartbroken," Priya replied, a new resolve forming within her. "I'm tired of being the tragic footnote in their love story." What Priya couldn't say was about the texts. It started 3 weeks ago. Late-night messages from Farhan, nostalgic at first, then increasingly intimate. "I made a mistake. I miss how you understood me." Zara is what my parents wanted. She had saved every message, unsure what to do with them. Part of her had wanted to warn Zara. Another part, the part still nursing a broken heart, had wanted to believe him. But the strongest part of her, the part that had slowly rebuilt herself after being discarded, knew better. "If you're going, then I'm coming as your +1, Nisha declared. Priya shook her head. "No, this is something I need to do alone." That evening, she RSVP'd with a single check mark next to "will attend." As she dropped the response card into the mailbox, she felt something shift inside her, a weight lifting, replaced by a quiet determination. She wasn't going to this wedding for closure or revenge. She was going for justice. Whispers behind smiles, the Grand Pavilion Hotel glittered under the afternoon sun, transformed into a fairy tale venue with cascading flowers and twinkling lights. Priya adjusted the gold dupatta of her emerald green lehenga as she stepped out of her rideshare. She had deliberately chosen an outfit that was elegant, but understated nothing that would draw attention or compete with the bride. Yet as she walked through the grand entrance, she felt every eye turn toward her. "I can't believe she actually came," whispered a woman to her husband. Not quite softly enough, Rohan, Farhan's cousin, nearly choked on his champagne when he saw her. "Priya, you made it." His eyes darted nervously around the room, clearly searching for Farhan. "I was invited," she replied simply, accepting a glass of sparkling water from a passing server. It would be rude not to attend. Across the hall, she spotted Farhan's mother, Mrs. Kumar, whose smile froze when their eyes met. The woman who had once called her Beta and taught her family recipes now looked at her, as if she were a ghost, unwelcome and unsettling. You have courage, I'll give you that, said a voice beside her. It was Samir, one of the few mutual friends who had remained neutral after the breakup. Are you okay being here? I'm better than okay, Priya answered, surprised to find it was true.
Do.
The anxiety that had plagued her all morning had dissipated, replaced by a strange calm. The ceremony was about to begin. Guests filtered into the garden where rows of chairs faced an elaborate mandap draped in red and gold. Priya chose a seat toward the back near the aisle. She wanted to be visible, but not conspicuous, present, but not intrusive. As the music began and Zara made her entrance, Priya had to admit she was breathtaking. Her bridal lehenga was a masterpiece of crimson and gold, her dark hair adorned with flowers and jewels. Farhan waited at the mandap, handsome in his sherwani, but his expression was tense despite his smile. Their eyes met as Zara progressed down the aisle. For a moment, Farhan's mask slipped surprise, fear, and something else flashed across his face. Then he looked away quickly. Focusing intently on his approaching bride, the ceremony proceeded with all the traditional rituals. The pundit recited Sanskrit mantras, the couple circled the sacred fire, and vows were exchanged. Throughout it all, Priya sat quietly, her face serene. Several times she caught Farhan glancing in her direction, each look more anxious than the last. He looks like he's seen a ghost, murmured an elderly aunt sitting nearby. Poor boy is probably worried she make a scene. She was always so quiet, though, replied her companion. Never had the spine for confrontation. That's probably why he left Hearn. It's someone with more personality. Priya pretended not to hear, but each word strengthened her resolve. These people had crafted a narrative where she was the inadequate one, the boring librarian who couldn't keep her man's interest. None of them knew that just 3 days ago. Farhan had texted her, I'm going through with this wedding because I have to, not because I want to. Meet me tonight, please. She hadn't responded. Instead, she had screenshot the message and added it to her growing collection. During the reception, Priya kept to herself, occasionally making polite conversation with distant acquaintances who approached her out of curiosity rather than genuine interest. She noticed how Farhan was careful to keep his distance, staying firmly by Zara's side as they greeted guests and posed for photographs. You know, we all think you're incredibly brave for coming, said Deepa, one of Zara's friends who had clearly been dared to approach her. Most women wouldn't have the... Well, they wouldn't want to watch their ex marry someone else. Most women, Priya replied evenly. Haven't seen the messages I have. Deepa's eyes widened, but before she could press for details, the MC announced it was time for speeches. Family members and close friends took turns at the microphone, offering congratulations and advice to the newlyweds. Laughter and applause filled the room as stories were shared, carefully curated anecdotes that painted Farhan and Zara as the perfect couple, destined for one another. Then came the open mic portion, where guests were invited to share brief wishes. A slight commotion arose at a table near the front when Vikram, Farhan's visibly intoxicated best friend, grabbed the microphone. Let's hear from Priya, he called out, his words slightly slurred. I'm sure she has something to say to the happy couple. The room fell silent. All eyes turned toward her. Some faces showed horror, others morbid curiosity. Farhan had gone pale, while Zara looked confused, clearly unaware of the significance of what was happening. Slowly, deliberately, Priya rose from her seat. The whispers began immediately, growing louder as she made her way toward the stage. This was not part of her plan. She had intended to observe, to be present, but passive. But as she walked, her phone heavy in the pocket of her lehenga, she realized this moment had been inevitable from the start. The speech that silenced the weight of the microphone in Priya's hand felt both foreign and strangely right as she faced the sea of expectant faces. Some guests were smirking, anticipating an embarrassing display of lingering attachment. Looked horrified, convinced she was about to create a scene. At the main table, Zara's expression was a mixture of confusion and growing unease, while Farhan's face had drained of all color. Thank you, Vikram, for the invitation to speak, Priya began, her voice clear and steady. And thank you, Farhan and Zara, for including me in your celebration today." A collective sigh of relief rippled through the room. This was going to be dignified after all, perhaps even a generous show of goodwill from the discarded ex. You know that Farhan and I were engaged until 6 months ago," she continued. "What you may not know is that our relationship didn't end when our engagement did." The relief in the room instantly evaporated. Farhan half rose from his seat, but Zara placed a restraining hand on his arm, her eyes now fixed on Priya with laser-like intensity. "I debated for weeks whether to come today, whether to say anything at all, but I realized that remaining silent would make me complicit in a deception that Zara doesn't deserve." Priya reached into her pocket and withdrew her phone. "I've received dozens of messages from Farhan over the past month. I believe it's important that Zara knows about them before she begins her married life." "This is inappropriate," interrupted Mrs. Kumar, standing up. "This young woman is clearly what, Auntie?" Priya asked quietly. "Clearly heartbroken? Clearly bitter? Or clearly telling the truth that nobody wants to hear?" She unlocked her phone and began to read. June 15th, 3 weeks ago. "Can't stop thinking about you, Priya. Marrying Zara is what my family wants, not what I want." The room went deathly quiet. Even Mrs. Kumar sank back into her seat, speechless. June 19th. "Meeting you was the best thing that ever happened to me. I made the biggest mistake of my life letting you go." Priya looked up briefly. Zara's face had gone from confusion to shock to a dawning rage. Farhan was frozen, his expression that of a man watching his life collapse in real time. June 25th. "I dream about you every night, about your voice, your laugh, the way you used to look at me like I was worthy of being loved." Someone gasped. Priya continued, her voice never wavering. "June 28th. If you agree to meet me, just once, I'll call off the wedding. Zara will understand. Our families arranged this match. But my heart has always been yours." Zara abruptly stood up, her expression thunderous. "Is this true?" she demanded, turning to Farhan. When he failed to answer, his silence became the most damning confirmation. And finally, Priya said, "From 3 days ago, I'm going through with this wedding because I have to, not because I want to. Meet me tonight, please." She put away her phone and looked directly at Zara. "I didn't come here for revenge. I came because I wish someone had told me the truth about Farhan before I almost married him. You deserve better than a man who's messaging his ex-fiancée the week of his wedding." Vikram, who had started this chain of events, was now staring, open-mouthed, at his best friend. "Dude," he murmured, audible in the silence. "What the hell?" "I didn't respond to any of these messages," Priya continued. "Not because I still love him, because I don't. But because I've learned that my worth isn't determined by someone else's validation." She placed the microphone gently on the nearest table. No dramatic drop, no theatrics, just the quiet dignity that had always been mistaken for weakness. "Congratulations on your wedding day," she concluded, addressing the stunned couple. "I hope it's exactly what you both deserve." With that, Priya turned and walked steadily toward the exit. Behind her, the room erupted into chaos. Zara's voice rose above the din, demanding explanations. Family members began arguing loudly, but Priya didn't look back. Her hands were steady, her breathing calm. For the first time in months, she felt completely free. Outside in the warm evening air, she took a deep breath. The sounds of the imploding reception faded as the doors closed behind her. A text message alert chimed on her phone. Nisha, checking in to see how she was doing. Priya smiled and began typing a response as she walked away from the Grand Pavilion Hotel, leaving behind the whispers, the judgments, and the man who had never truly deserved her. Aftermath and revelations, the chaos at the Grand Pavilion Hotel continued long after Priya's departure. Security guards hovered uncertainly at the edges of the reception hall, unsure if intervention was required as the elegant wedding dissolved into a spectacle of recriminations and damage control. Zara had retreated to a private room. Surrounded by her closest friends and her visibly shaken parents, her wedding lehenga, which had cost more than some people's cars, was crumpled as she sat rigidly in an armchair, refusing the tissues her mother offered. "Did you know?" she asked Deepa, who had spoken to Priya earlier. "Did everyone know he was still messaging her?" I swear I didn't, Deepa insisted, though her eyes couldn't quite meet Zara's. She said something cryptic about messages, but I thought she was just being dramatic. In another room, Farhan faced his own tribunal. Parents stood before him, their expressions a mixture of fury and mortification. His father, Dr. Kumar, a respected cardiologist whose reputation in the community was immaculate, looked as though he might need the services of a colleague at any moment. "How could you do this to us?" his mother hissed. "To the Mirza family. Do you have any idea of the damage you've caused?" Farhan sat with his head in his hands. His wedding sherwani, now creased and stained with the wine someone had, accidentally on purpose, spilled on him during the exodus from the reception. "I was confused," he muttered. "I never meant for any of this to happen." "Confused?" his father thundered. "You were confused, so you sent romantic messages to your ex-fiancé days before your wedding. This isn't confusion, Beta. This is sabotage of your life, of Zara's life, of this alliance between our families." Outside these private confrontations, the wedding guests had split into factions. Some departed hastily, eager to distance themselves from the scandal. Others lingered, abandoning all pretense as they openly gossiped about what they'd witnessed. "I always thought there was something off about how quickly he moved on to Zara," said one elderly aunt to her circle of friends. "Now we know why he never moved on at all." Vikram, sobering rapidly in the face of the disaster he'd inadvertently helped create, tried to find someone who knew where Farhan was. "I didn't know he kept telling anyone who would listen. I was just trying to make a stupid joke. I thought she'd say something nice or get emotional and leave. I didn't know about the texts." Meanwhile, across town, Priya had arrived home too. Find Nisha waiting with a bottle of wine and a sympathetic ear. As Priya recounted what had happened, Nisha's expressions ranged from shock to vindication to admiration. "I can't believe you actually did it," she said when Priya finished her story. "After all these months of being the quiet one, the one everyone pitied, ... you just stood up there and dropped the truth like a bomb." "I didn't plan to speak," Priya admitted, kicking off her heels and accepting a glass of wine. "But when Vikram called me out, something just clicked. I realized I was tired of carrying Farhan's secrets. I was tired of protecting someone who never protected me." Her phone had been buzzing continuously since she left the wedding messages from mutual friends, from acquaintances who had witnessed her speech, even from Samir, who simply texted, "That was the most badass thing I've ever seen. Are you okay?" There were no messages from Farhan. "Do you think Zara will still marry him?" Nisha asked, refilling their glasses. Priya shrugged. "I don't know. Her family has a lot invested in this match financially and socially, but she didn't strike me as someone who would tolerate being second choice." Up with a message from an unknown number. "This is Zara Mirza. We need to talk. Can we meet tomorrow?" Priya showed the message to Nisha, whose eyes widened. "Are you going to meet her?" "I think I owe her that much," Priya replied after a moment's consideration. Not for Farhan's sake, but for hers. The next morning, Priya met Zara at a quiet cafe, far from their community's usual haunts. Zara looked different without the bridal. Finer, younger, more vulnerable, but with a hardness in her eyes that hadn't been there before. "I didn't go through with it," Zara said without preamble, as Priya sat down across from her. "After you left, it was ... chaos, but I knew I couldn't marry him." "I'm sorry," Priya said, and meant it. "Not for telling the truth, but for the pain it caused you." Zara stirred her untouched coffee. "Don't be. My father wanted this match because the Kumars have connections our family needs. I convinced myself I could learn to love Farhan." She looked up, meeting Priya's eyes directly. "I need to know everything. When did it start? The messages, I mean." For the next hour, Priya answered Zara's questions honestly, showing her the full thread of messages from Farhan that had begun almost immediately after he and Zara got engaged. As Zara read, her expression shifted from hurt to anger to something like relief. "You know what's ironic?" Zara said finally, pushing the phone back across the table. "I always envied you. Everyone talked about how much Farhan had loved you, how devastating it was when he ended things. I thought I'd never measure up to his first love. Now I realize. He never stopped manipulating both of us. He's very good at making people feel special," Priya agreed. "And even better at making them feel like they're the problem when things go wrong. As they prepared to leave, Zara hesitated. "Thank you," she said quietly. "Everyone's calling you the villain in this story, but you're not. You're the only one who was brave enough to tell the truth." New beginnings 3 months after what the community now referred to simply as the wedding. Life had settled into new patterns for everyone involved. The scandal had eventually faded from daily conversation, replaced by fresher gossip, though. It still resurfaced occasionally at dinner parties when someone unwittingly mentioned weddings or the Grand Pavilion Hotel. Priya stood in the university library, shelving books in the literature section, a task she had once found tedious but now approached with a sense of peace. Her world had expanded since that fateful day. The library, once her refuge, was now just one facet of her life rather than its entirety. "Ms. Sharma," student approached, interrupting her thoughts. "I finished that book you recommended last week. It was amazing, exactly what I needed for my dissertation." "I'm glad it helped, Rajan," she replied with a genuine smile. In the aftermath of the wedding, Priya had channeled her energy into her work, proposing and implementing a new literature outreach program for graduate students. To her surprise, the university had not only approved it, but had featured her in their staff newsletter. Highlighting her innovative approach to academic resource management, her phone buzzed with a message from Samir. "Tonight's still on, right? 7 p.m. at Indigo?" Their friendship had evolved in unexpected ways since the wedding. What had begun as occasional coffee meetings to discuss books had gradually transformed into something deeper. Samir, with his quiet intelligence and unwavering respect for her boundaries, had become an important part of her life, though neither of them was rushing to define exactly what that meant. Later that evening, as they sat across from each other, at Indigo, their conversation flowed easily from literature to politics to community gossip. "Have you heard?" Samir asked, his expression careful. "Farhan's moved to Toronto. Apparently, his father pulled some strings to get him a position at a hospital there. A fresh start, away from the scandal." Priya nodded, unsurprised. "And his parents, still here, still holding their heads high?" Though Mrs. Kumar mysteriously dropped out of the hospital charity board, "I guess some social consequences were unavoidable in Zara?" Priya asked, genuinely curious. The two women hadn't spoken since their cafe meeting, but Priya often thought of her. Samir smiled, "Actually thriving from what I hear. She's expanded her interior design business and just landed a contract with that new luxury hotel downtown. Turned out getting publicly humiliated at her almost wedding was the best career move she could have made." Lots of sympathy clients. Priya laughed, surprised by how little pain she felt discussing these people who had once been the center of her world. "Good for her. She deserves success. What about you?" Samir asked, his gaze warm. "Any regrets about how things turned out?" Priya considered the question carefully. The aftermath of her speech hadn't been easy. There had been angry calls from Farhan's relatives, judgment from conservative community members who felt she had behaved inappropriately regardless of provocation, and the exhaustion of suddenly being at the center of attention after a lifetime of blending into the background. But there had also been unexpected support. Women she barely knew had reached out with their own stories of deception and gaslighting. Her parents, initially horrified by the public nature of the confrontation, had ultimately stood by her decision to speak her truth. And she had discovered a strength within herself that no one, not even she, had recognized before. "No regrets," she said finally. "I spent too long being the person everyone expected me to. Be quiet, accommodating, invisible. That day at the wedding, I finally became myself." Across town, in her stylish downtown apartment, Zara was reviewing design plans with her team when her assistant announced an unexpected visitor. Curious, she stepped into the reception area to find Nisha, Priya's roommate, waiting with a portfolio. "I hear you're looking for a graphic designer for your new branding," Nisha said without preamble. "I'd like to apply for the job." Zara raised an eyebrow. "Aren't you Priya's friend? The one who wanted to come to the wedding as her backup?" "I am," Nisha confirmed. "But I'm also the best designer in the city, and your business deserves the best. Unless you're still holding grudges?" After a moment's consideration, Zara laughed. "Grudges? Against Priya or her friends?" She did me the biggest favor of my life. She gestured toward her office. Come in, let's see what you've got. As night fell over the city, Priya and Samir walked along the riverfront, their conversation having shifted to future plans. Priya had recently applied for a grant to pursue her doctorate in literary archive, something she had always wanted but had put aside during her relationship with Farhan, with subtly discouraged ambitions that might compete with his medical career. Whatever happens with the grant, Samir said, I'm proud of you for applying. It takes courage to pursue your dreams, especially after putting them on hold for so long. I'm learning that courage isn't just about grand gestures, Priya replied, thinking of that moment at the wedding when she had taken the microphone. Sometimes it's about the quiet decisions we make every day to value ourselves, to speak our truth, to keep moving forward. They paused at a viewpoint overlooking the glittering city skyline. In the distance, the illuminated spire of the Grand Pavilion Hotel pierced the night sky, a reminder of endings that had become beginnings. 2 new chapters, Samir said softly, taking her hand. Priya smiled, feeling the rightness of this moment. This path, this life that was finally, truly her own. 2 new chapters, she agreed, and together they continued their walk into the future, leaving the whispers and judgments of the past where they belonged behind them.